The morning began like any other, with the clinking of coffee cups, the soft chatter of guests, and the subtle aroma of fresh pastries filling the air. She moved quietly among the tables, her uniform simple and plain, her hair pulled back in a tidy bun. No one noticed her beyond the polite nods and brief exchanges. She had been a waitress here for years, learning to blend into the background, learning that the world often overlooked the quiet ones. Yet beneath her calm exterior, a storm of music lived inside her, a fire she had learned to keep hidden. It was not that she sought attention. She had learned early that the world often judged on appearances rather than talent. Her hands, though delicate and small, held a skill that had amazed teachers and classmates when she was young. Her fingers could glide across piano keys, creating music that could stir hearts and bring tears to eyes. But life had a way of demanding practicality, and so she had taken a simple job, leaving her talent to be a secret comfort, a private joy. As she carried trays of food, she observed the people around her. Guests arrived in elegant dresses and tailored suits, laughing softly and speaking in low tones that suggested wealth and influence. There was a certain rhythm to their movements, a world apart from the kitchen's heat and the quiet corners she often lingered in. They were a world she could never truly belong to, yet she watched with a mix of curiosity and longing. She had seen performers come and go, musicians who carried their fame like armor, and she had wondered what it would be like to step onto a stage, even just once, and let the music speak instead of words. The day's event was a gala, a celebration of art and culture, and the large hall had been transformed with flowers, sparkling lights, and a grand piano placed in the center. She had been assigned to serve drinks and appetizers, moving among the guests as they admired the decorations and spoke of performances to come. Her heart beat faster each time she passed the piano. It was a magnificent instrument, polished to a gleaming shine, and it called to her in a way that no tray or order ever could. She carried a tray of champagne to a table, her hands steady, though her mind wandered to the keys. She imagined the sound she could create, the way a melody could rise and fall like the tide, how it could touch people in ways words never could. She smiled faintly at the thought, shaking herself back to the present as the guests thanked her and returned to their conversation. She was careful, always careful, never letting her longing show, never letting anyone glimpse the world of music she carried silently inside. The event moved on with speeches and quiet applause, and she continued her duties, moving swiftly yet unobtrusively. She noticed a few people talking near the piano, whispering about the performances scheduled for the evening. It seemed that something unexpected was going to happen, and a part of her listened with growing interest. Her curiosity mingled with a flicker of hope, though she pushed it aside. It was not her place to hope for the spotlight. Yet the piano seemed to hum under the soft lights, as if it knew she was there, as if it waited for her to speak through it. At one point, a young organizer approached her, a look of mild concern on their face. "We need someone to play the piano," they said softly. "The scheduled performer is unavailable, and the guests expect something special." Her heart leapt, and she forced herself to stay calm. She shook her head politely. "I'm just here to serve," she said, keeping her voice steady, though inside, her mind raced. She had never performed in front of a crowd like this. It was not just a large group. It was people of influence, people who could judge her harshly if she failed. She imagined them laughing if they knew a waitress could play at all. The organizer hesitated, looking around as though searching for someone else. "Isn't there anyone who can play? We need someone now." Her hands tightened on the tray she carried. She could not let this opportunity slip away, though fear gripped her like a cold hand. She had practiced in secret for years, alone in her small apartment, letting her music fill the empty rooms. She knew she could do it. She just had to summon the courage to step forward. A quiet voice inside urged her on. "Why not?" she thought. "This is your moment. You've waited for years, hidden behind your work, hidden behind the quiet smile you give to the world. What if this is your chance to be heard, to show that talent cannot be contained forever?" Her decision was swift, almost instinctive. She placed the tray on the nearby table, nodding to the organizer. "I can do it," she said softly. The words felt foreign on her tongue, but they carried the weight of resolve. The organizer's eyes widened in surprise but quickly masked it with a polite nod. "Thank you," they said, stepping aside. "Please, the stage is ready." She walked toward the piano, each step measured, trying to keep her fear from showing. The room seemed larger than before, filled with glittering lights, the hum of conversation, and the occasional clink of glasses. Guests glanced at her curiously, some with polite interest, others with mild amusement. A waitress playing the piano? Perhaps they thought it a novelty. She ignored their thoughts, focusing instead on the piano before her. Its polished surface reflected the lights, and she could see her own hands poised above the keys, trembling slightly. She took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill her lungs. She sat down on the bench, adjusting her posture as she had done countless times alone in her apartment. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The chatter faded, the clinking of glasses became distant, and all that existed was the piano and the music waiting to be born. Her first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but they carried a clarity that made some heads turn. She played a simple melody at first, allowing the audience to adjust, to feel the subtle power behind each note. She could feel the tension in the room, the skepticism of those who could not imagine greatness hidden behind a waitress's uniform. She let the music speak, weaving emotion into each chord, building slowly, letting her confidence grow with every passing moment. As the melody expanded, her fingers danced across the keys with grace and precision. The music grew in complexity, layering harmonies that resonated in the hall. Some guests leaned forward, drawn into the sound, their previous judgments dissolving into awe. The piano, once a mere object, became an extension of her soul, carrying her hidden passion into the open for all to hear. Even as she played, she remained humble, aware of the crowd yet focused on the music itself. Each note was a statement, not of pride but of truth. That talent does not require recognition to exist, that even the quietest among us can hold brilliance within. She felt a strange combination of fear and exhilaration, the kind that only comes when one risks everything to reveal their true self. By the time she finished the first section of the piece, the room was silent. Some guests exchanged astonished glances, unable to comprehend that the music they had just heard came from someone they had overlooked. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that this was only the beginning, that her real story, her true performance, was yet to unfold. The piano hummed softly under her hands, waiting for her to continue, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. Her heart still raced, but the fear had transformed into determination. She realized that this moment was not just about music. It was about showing the world the truth of her hidden strength, about proving that talent and heart cannot remain unnoticed forever. She straightened, poised to play again, ready to take the audience further into the world she had kept secret for so long, ready to let the music speak louder than words ever could. The hall remained quiet after her first notes filled the air, but she did not let herself pause. Her fingers were poised above the keys, and she could feel the energy of the room, the shifting curiosity, the subtle turning of heads. People who had barely glanced at her now watched intently, their eyes reflecting surprise and fascination. The initial skepticism had faded, replaced by a cautious wonder. She allowed herself a small, private smile, though she kept her focus entirely on the piano. She began to play more confidently now, letting her music flow naturally, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to be released. The melody became richer, more complex, each note carefully placed, building a bridge between her hidden world and the audience around her. She remembered every lesson, every private practice session, the times she had poured her heart into music with no one listening, and she let all of it guide her hands. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a storyteller, a channel for the music that had lived quietly inside her for so long. As the piece unfolded, she noticed the subtle reactions of those watching. Some leaned forward slightly, a quiet gasp escaping lips that had moments before whispered doubts. Others remained still, their expressions blank at first, then gradually shifting as the power of the music reached them. She did not seek approval, yet she felt a growing connection with the audience, as if each note she played was a thread weaving them together into a shared experience. The room seemed to shrink, the glittering lights fading into a soft glow, leaving only her and the piano, her music filling every corner. She could feel the pressure of expectation, yet it energized her rather than frightening her. Each crescendo and delicate passage became an extension of her soul, her fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys, bringing life to a piece that was as much about emotion as it was about technical skill. She glanced briefly at the guests, noticing their surprise and admiration. The whispers had stopped, replaced by rapt attention. Someone had even raised a phone, subtly recording the moment, but she did not mind. The music itself was her message, her proof, and she knew it needed no introduction. Her heart pounded not with fear but with exhilaration, and she allowed herself to feel the joy of sharing something deeply personal with the world. The piece transitioned into a more playful section, her fingers moving swiftly, executing runs and arpeggios with precision and grace. The audience gasped softly, the skill evident even to those who did not understand the technical details. She played not to impress but to express, letting each note carry emotion and story. The piano seemed to respond to her touch, as if it were alive, echoing her passion and amplifying it, filling the hall with sound that made it impossible to think of anything else. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine the life she could have led, had she always pursued her music openly. The idea was tempting, but she pushed it aside, reminding herself that this moment, right now, was all that mattered. She did not need fame or recognition. She only needed to be true to herself, to let the music speak, and that was exactly what she was doing. She could feel her confidence growing, the fear melting away with each note. The audience, once polite and distant, was now fully present, drawn into the world she created. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others leaned forward, captivated by the rapid runs and subtle harmonies. A few whispered to each other, clearly amazed at the unexpected talent displayed by someone they had barely noticed before. Her piece built toward a dramatic climax, the notes rising and falling with intensity. She played with emotion, with depth, conveying joy, sorrow, and everything in between. Her fingers moved swiftly yet carefully, ensuring each note landed perfectly, and her face reflected the passion she poured into the music. It was more than a performance. It was a revelation, a story told without words, a truth laid bare for all to see. As the climax reached its peak, she could feel the room holding its breath. The tension, the anticipation, the awe all combined into a singular moment that seemed suspended in time. She played with abandon, allowing herself to fully inhabit the music, forgetting the crowd, forgetting the gala, forgetting everything except the piano and the sound that flowed from it. She had become the music, and the music had become her. When the final note echoed through the hall, it was met with stunned silence. The sound lingered, vibrating in the air, leaving a profound impression on everyone present. Some guests blinked rapidly, processing what they had just witnessed, while others sat motionless, overwhelmed by the unexpected brilliance. She remained seated, her hands resting lightly on the keys, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of her heartbeat. She allowed herself a small exhale, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey she had just taken through her own talent. Slowly, the applause began, tentative at first, then growing louder as the audience realized the magnitude of what they had heard. Hands clapped, some guests rose to their feet, and murmurs of admiration filled the room. She did not stand, did not bow immediately. She let the music linger a moment longer, knowing that the silence that followed had its own power, a final reminder of the impact of what she had shared. The organizer who had approached her earlier came forward, eyes wide with amazement. They tried to speak, but words seemed insufficient, caught between disbelief and wonder. She nodded politely, offering a quiet smile, her focus still partially on the piano. She knew that this was just the beginning, that the real journey had yet to unfold. This was the spark, the moment when hidden talent met opportunity, and the results were undeniable. A few guests approached, their expressions a mixture of shock and admiration. Some asked questions, trying to understand how someone could possess such skill without formal recognition. She answered modestly, careful to keep her tone humble, emphasizing that music was her passion and that she played because she loved it, not for fame or accolades. Her sincerity only amplified the effect of her performance, as people recognized the authenticity behind her talent. The whispers and admiration spread quickly, and soon the story of the waitress who had played an extraordinary piece reached all corners of the gala. People who had previously overlooked her now spoke of her with respect and curiosity. Yet she remained grounded, aware that this was only one performance, that her life outside this hall had not changed overnight. Still, a quiet pride filled her, a recognition that she had taken a risk and let the world glimpse her true self. As she prepared to play the next section, she felt a calm determination settle over her. The initial fear had transformed into focus, the nerves replaced by clarity. She knew that the next part of her performance would be even more revealing, a deeper dive into her skill and emotion, and she was ready. The piano waited beneath her hands, and the hall leaned forward, captivated, expecting something extraordinary. She smiled softly to herself, her heart steady, ready to continue the story she was telling through music, ready to unleash even more of her hidden brilliance. The soft murmur of the audience surrounded her as she prepared to continue. The piano felt alive beneath her fingers, the polished wood warm and inviting, almost like it was encouraging her to go further. She could sense the curiosity and anticipation in the room, but she let it wash over her without distraction. Her world had narrowed down to the keys, the music, and the story she wanted to tell. She started the next part slowly, almost tentatively, as if she were drawing the audience in with a gentle invitation. The melody was soft, delicate, and full of emotion. Each note was precise, yet it carried a warmth that seemed to touch everyone present. The audience leaned in instinctively, drawn into a space that was intimate and vast at the same time. The room, filled with laughter and chatter only moments ago, was now silent, hanging on every sound. As she played, her mind moved fluidly between technique and emotion. She remembered the hours she had spent alone, practicing scales, chords, and complicated passages, perfecting each movement of her fingers until it felt like an extension of herself. It was not just skill that guided her now. It was instinct, a deep understanding of how to communicate without words. She wanted every listener to feel something, even if they had never imagined that a waitress could create music that moved hearts so profoundly. Her music began to build gradually, adding layers of complexity. Fast, flowing passages interwove with slower, more reflective segments, creating a rhythm that seemed alive. She could feel the room responding. Heads tilted slightly, eyes widened, some even closed to absorb the full sound. She noticed the subtle exchange of glances among the guests, a shared recognition of something extraordinary taking place. The air was charged with anticipation, the kind that comes when people realize they are witnessing a rare moment. Despite the intensity of the music, she remained aware of her own breathing, letting it guide the flow of each phrase. She allowed the melody to rise and fall naturally, her fingers flying across the keys with ease. Every chord resonated deeply, echoing in the walls and in the hearts of those listening. She could see the gradual shift in expressions, the disbelief turning into admiration, the polite interest turning into genuine awe. She had reached a part of the piece that demanded both precision and emotion, a combination that tested even the most seasoned performers. Her hands moved in perfect coordination, hitting each note with confidence, while maintaining the subtle nuances that gave the piece its soul. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. She was fully present, every thought focused on the music, every emotion channeled into the performance. She could feel the energy of the room, the collective heartbeat of the audience, and it inspired her to push further. As the composition grew more intricate, she began to notice the small, human reactions around her. A guest's hand trembled slightly as they held a glass, Another's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and a few whispered softly to each other, unable to contain their surprise. Even those who had doubted her talent at the start were captivated, drawn into the story she was telling without a single word. The music was a bridge, connecting her to people who had previously seen her as nothing more than a waitress. She allowed the piece to reach a more dramatic section, her fingers moving rapidly yet gracefully, executing intricate patterns that demanded focus and skill. The hall seemed to vibrate with sound, each note carrying weight, each pause filled with anticipation. She was no longer playing for herself or even for recognition. She was playing to touch souls, to communicate something beyond the ordinary. The depth of feeling she poured into the performance was palpable, and the audience responded in kind. The crescendo approached, powerful and commanding, yet she played with control, each chord deliberate, each scale intentional. She felt the adrenaline surge through her, the thrill of showing her true talent to a world that had not known it existed. The music became more than sound. It became a living thing, a story unfolding in real time, full of emotion, surprise, and revelation. She could sense the collective gasp that followed certain passages, the quiet awe that settled over the audience as they realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Her hands danced over the keys, alternating between gentle touches and bold, confident strokes. Every transition was seamless, every pause measured, creating a rhythm that kept the listeners completely absorbed. She noticed the subtle changes in the room. People leaning closer to catch every sound, others closing their eyes to fully experience the music, a few recording the moment discreetly, aware that this was something unforgettable. Yet she remained centered, her focus unshaken, her connection to the piano and the story unbroken. Time seemed to slow as she entered a particularly emotional passage, the notes flowing like a river carrying both sorrow and hope. She felt herself letting go, surrendering to the music completely. Her performance was no longer about proving herself. It was about expressing the depth of feeling she had carried in secret for so long. Every note was infused with authenticity, every phrase a testament to her dedication, talent, and heart. The audience, fully captivated, was now part of the journey. They were silent witnesses to a revelation, a hidden talent unveiled in the most unlikely of people. Their expressions ranged from shock to wonder, disbelief to admiration, yet each was deeply affected by the performance. The room had transformed, the barriers of social hierarchy, assumptions, and appearances fading as the music connected them all on a human level. As she moved toward the climax of this part of the piece, her playing became more assertive, her emotions more intense. The audience could feel the power of the music, the story unfolding with every note, and a sense of shared awe filled the hall. She noticed subtle smiles, tears, and even quiet exclamations of amazement, but she kept her attention on the piano, letting the performance carry on naturally. This was her moment, her opportunity to reveal who she truly was. Her fingers moved with a combination of precision and passion, executing complex runs and expressive chords that highlighted both her technical skill and her emotional depth. The hall seemed to pulse with the music, the sound resonating in every corner. She felt a surge of energy, a realization that she was capable of more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. The piano and the audience became one, a shared experience that transcended the ordinary, and for the first time in a long while, she felt fully seen. As the section concluded, she allowed a brief pause, letting the resonance of the last notes linger in the air. The room was silent for a heartbeat, as if holding its collective breath, before the subtle rustle of movement and whispered admiration began. She did not stand or acknowledge the audience yet, savoring the moment, letting the impact of the music settle over them. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had begun to touch lives without saying a single word. The organizer approached again, eyes wide and filled with disbelief. They could not help but smile, clearly amazed at what they had just witnessed. A few guests murmured to each other, speculating about her background, unable to reconcile the image of the waitress with the performer they had just experienced. She remained composed, keeping her humility intact, letting the music speak louder than any explanation or title could. She was aware that this was only one part of the journey, that the most powerful sections of the performance were yet to come. The first section had revealed her skill, but the next part would reveal the depth of her soul. She felt ready, focused, and exhilarated, her heart steady, her hands confident. The piano seemed to await her command, and the hall, now fully attentive, held a collective expectation, eager to see what she would do next. As she prepared to move into the next segment, she allowed herself a brief thought, that sometimes hidden brilliance waits for the right moment to shine. She had been patient, had waited for years, and now, this unexpected opportunity had arrived. The world was finally listening, and she intended to make every note count. The audience, still in awe, was ready to follow her wherever the music would lead, unaware that they were about to witness something truly unforgettable. The music had already captured the room, but she knew the most powerful part was yet to come. Her fingers hovered above the keys, feeling the weight and responsibility of the moment. Every note she played until now had been a preparation, a way to draw the audience into her world. But this next segment was where she would reveal the full depth of her skill and emotion. The piano, polished and shining under the soft lights, seemed to pulse in anticipation with her heartbeat. She began the new section with a bold chord, the sound echoing through the hall. The audience reacted instantly. Some leaned forward, others held their breath, sensing the intensity that was about to unfold. She allowed herself to become fully immersed, letting her hands move freely, guided by both instinct and years of practice. The music became a living expression, an unfolding story that required no words to convey its meaning. Her fingers danced across the keys with increasing speed and precision. The melody twisted and turned, flowing from delicate, whispering passages to thunderous, commanding notes that filled every corner of the hall. The contrast created a dynamic tension, drawing the audience deeper into her performance. She could see their reactions, the subtle widening of eyes, the small gasps, the slight movements forward in seats as people became captivated by the power and beauty of the music. The piece demanded not only technical skill but emotional depth, and she gave both with every fiber of her being. She remembered the lonely hours spent practicing, the quiet moments of frustration and triumph, and she poured all of that into her playing. Each note carried a piece of her story, a fragment of the life she had led hidden behind a simple uniform and a calm exterior. Now that story unfolded through the piano, vivid and undeniable. As the melody soared, she felt a surge of exhilaration. The room seemed to vibrate with the sound, and the air itself seemed to hum with energy. The audience was no longer merely watching. They were participating in the experience, their emotions intertwined with the ebb and flow of the music. She could feel their anticipation, their awe, their astonishment, and it inspired her to push further, to explore every possibility that the piano allowed. She moved into a rapid series of arpeggios, her fingers moving with fluid precision, creating a cascade of sound that was both intricate and breathtaking. The audience was spellbound. Some closed their eyes to fully absorb the music, letting it wash over them, while others whispered softly, unable to comprehend that such talent came from someone they had casually overlooked all evening. She played with a quiet confidence, knowing that this was the moment that would define the impression she left on everyone present. Her piece began to build toward a dramatic climax, a sequence that combined both speed and emotion, requiring total focus and control. She allowed herself to feel the intensity, letting it guide her hands across the keys. The music rose and fell like waves, powerful yet delicate, commanding yet tender. Every chord, every note was intentional, designed to elicit a reaction, to move hearts, to captivate minds. She could sense the audience hanging on each phrase, anticipating what would come next, fully engaged in the performance she had created. As the climax approached, she intensified the dynamics, allowing the music to swell and then drop, creating suspense and surprise. Her fingers flew across the keys with a mastery that seemed almost effortless, yet it was the result of years of dedication and relentless practice. She played not for recognition but for expression, for the sheer joy of bringing music to life in a way that could touch those around her deeply. Each note was a declaration of her passion, her resilience, her ability to transform quiet talent into something extraordinary. She could see the visible reactions of the audience, the silent awe, the quick exchange of glances, the subtle nods of appreciation. Some were moved to tears, some gasped quietly, and a few whispered to their neighbors, clearly amazed that someone they had considered ordinary could create such extraordinary music. She remained focused on the piano, aware of the room yet entirely immersed in the story she was telling through sound. It was a rare and powerful moment, one she had dreamed of but never imagined would unfold like this. The music then shifted into a more expressive and emotional section. The notes became longer, more lyrical, drawing out feelings that had remained unspoken for years. Her hands moved with both grace and purpose, each phrase building on the last, creating a tapestry of sound that wrapped around the audience, enveloping them in the depth of her artistry. She played with a vulnerability that was both daring and beautiful, revealing not just her skill but her heart. The audience responded instinctively. They leaned in, closed their eyes, whispered in wonder, and for a moment, the room existed solely for the music. The distinction between performer and listener faded, replaced by a shared experience, a collective journey through the highs and lows of the piece. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a recognition that she had succeeded in connecting on a human level, conveying emotions that transcended language, status, or expectation. Her hands moved seamlessly from one motif to another, weaving together complex harmonies, rapid sequences, and delicate flourishes. The piano seemed to become an extension of herself, each movement precise yet expressive, technical mastery and emotion perfectly intertwined. The audience, captivated and enthralled, could feel the depth of her commitment, the authenticity of her performance. They realized, perhaps with astonishment, that the woman before them was more than a waitress. She was a storyteller, an artist, a force of nature disguised in plain attire. The climax reached its peak, and she allowed herself to play with abandon, letting every emotion, every ounce of her ability pour into the music. The room was alive with sound, and she could feel the collective energy of the audience, their admiration and amazement fueling her performance. Every chord reverberated with meaning, every rapid passage carried urgency and passion. She was no longer just playing. She was communicating on a level deeper than words, reaching hearts and minds alike. As the final chord rang out, there was a brief, suspended silence. It felt as though time itself held its breath, waiting to see how the room would respond. Then, slowly, the applause began, soft at first, then growing into a wave of appreciation and wonder. People stood, clapped, some even whispered awestruck comments. The impact of the performance was undeniable, the revelation of her talent impossible to ignore. She remained seated, her hands resting lightly on the keys, a small smile on her face. The music had conveyed everything she wanted it to, leaving the audience both amazed and moved. She took a deep breath, savoring the quiet power of the moment, aware that she had transformed the evening from ordinary to unforgettable. The piano had been her voice, and she had spoken clearly and profoundly. The organizer approached, eyes wide with disbelief and admiration. They struggled for words, caught between surprise and awe. She nodded politely, letting her calm demeanor speak louder than any explanation could. Guests approached slowly, some to compliment, some to express astonishment, and she responded with humility, letting the music remain the centerpiece of the experience. The performance had shifted the perception of everyone in the room. What had started as a casual assumption about a waitress had become a revelation about hidden talent, dedication, and the power of taking a chance. She had proven that brilliance could be found in the most unexpected places and that passion, when unleashed, could captivate even the most discerning audience. As she prepared to move to the next part of her performance, she felt a quiet confidence settle over her. The fear that had accompanied her earlier was gone, replaced by the thrill of sharing her talent and the connection she had established with the audience. She knew that the story was not over, that the final moments of her piece would leave an even deeper impression, and she was ready to deliver it with the same grace, precision, and emotion that had brought the hall to life tonight. The final notes of her previous section still hung in the air, vibrating softly, leaving the audience captivated and in awe. She allowed a moment for the echoes to settle, letting the silence emphasize the power of what had just occurred. Her hands hovered over the keys for a brief instant, feeling the energy of the room, sensing the collective anticipation. The audience had been drawn into her world, and now she prepared to reveal even more of her talent, the depth of skill and emotion she had held hidden for so long. She began again, this time with a melody that was gentle at first, almost fragile, yet full of emotion. Each note was deliberate, chosen to stir something inside the listeners, to connect with them on a human level. She played not just with her hands, but with her heart, allowing the music to flow naturally, expressing joy, sadness, hope, and determination. The audience, now completely attentive, felt the shift immediately, sensing that this was a turning point, that the story she was telling through the piano was far from ordinary. As she continued, the melody slowly gained strength, building with careful grace. Her fingers moved with fluidity, executing sequences that were technically complex yet delivered with elegance and ease. The contrast between soft, delicate passages and bold, dramatic notes created an emotional journey, one that carried the listeners along effortlessly. She could see subtle signs of astonishment around the room, raised eyebrows, widened eyes, and expressions of disbelief as people realized the skill she possessed. The whispers and chatter of the gala had vanished, replaced by a shared focus, a quiet admiration that hung in the air. The piece began to develop layers, harmonies intertwining with one another, creating a rich, vibrant soundscape that filled every corner of the hall. She allowed herself to feel the music completely, letting it guide her hands and thoughts. Each note was an extension of herself, a reflection of years of dedication and quiet practice, of moments spent alone with her piano, perfecting each passage. She had hidden this side of herself for so long, and now, finally, she could express it fully and openly. Her fingers moved faster now, dancing across the keys in sequences that required precision and mastery. The audience reacted immediately. Some leaned closer to watch, others closed their eyes to fully absorb the sound, and a few whispered in amazement, unable to comprehend that such brilliance came from someone they had considered ordinary. She was aware of the reactions but did not allow them to distract her. Her focus remained entirely on the music, on the story unfolding under her hands. The melody shifted again, becoming more emotional, more profound. She played with vulnerability, allowing the audience to feel the honesty in her performance. Her hands moved with purpose, yet there was a softness to certain passages, a tenderness that contrasted beautifully with the strength and power of the dramatic sections. The music communicated a depth of feeling that words could not capture, and the audience responded instinctively. Some were visibly moved, others simply stared in quiet admiration, captivated by the realization that they were witnessing a rare gift. As she approached a particularly challenging section, the technical demands increased, yet she played with confidence and grace. The piece required rapid fingerwork, precise timing, and careful control of dynamics, all of which she executed flawlessly. The audience could feel the intensity, the dedication, and the passion behind each note. The music seemed to carry a life of its own, and for those listening, it was impossible not to be swept along, unable to look away or think of anything other than the sound and the performer who created it. The hall was still buzzing with admiration from the previous sections of her performance, yet she knew the final part would leave the deepest impression. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight and thrill of the moment, and let her hands hover above the keys for a heartbeat. The piano seemed to respond, as if aware that it was about to carry the culmination of years of hidden dedication and quiet mastery. The audience was fully attentive, silent in expectation, eager to witness the conclusion of the story she was telling through music. She began softly, almost whispering through the keys, drawing the listeners in with a tender, expressive melody. The notes were deliberate, carrying emotion and nuance that spoke directly to the heart. Her fingers moved gracefully, each one a bridge between her passion and the audience's wonder. The room, once filled with casual chatter and polite applause, was now transformed into a space of shared experience, where every person was connected to the music in a profound way. As the piece gradually gained intensity, she allowed the melody to build, adding layers of harmony and complex sequences. Her hands danced across the keys, fluid and confident, executing runs and arpeggios that displayed both technical mastery and deep feeling. The audience was mesmerized. Some closed their eyes to fully absorb the sound, letting the music fill them entirely. Others leaned forward, unable to believe that such brilliance came from someone who had seemed so ordinary moments ago. Each note was a revelation, a statement that true talent often hides in the most unexpected places. The music began to shift dynamically, rising and falling, alternating between gentle passages and powerful surges. Her fingers moved with precision and expression, bringing the composition to life in a way that was both astonishing and deeply human. She felt her own emotions reflected in the sound, a mix of pride, humility, and exhilaration. Every chord, every phrase, was a testament to the years of practice she had kept secret, a story told without words, but with unmistakable sincerity. The audience's reactions grew more visible. Some gasped softly, others whispered in astonishment, and a few leaned in closer to watch the skillful execution of rapid passages. Her performance demanded attention, not through theatrics, but through the sheer beauty and intensity of the music. It was impossible to look away, impossible not to feel the impact of each note. She had become a storyteller, her story conveyed entirely through her hands and heart. As the piece approached its peak, the complexity and emotional depth intensified. She moved seamlessly between sections that required delicate touch and those that demanded commanding strength. The piano resonated with each strike, echoing through the hall, captivating everyone in the room. The music carried a sense of triumph and revelation, reflecting not only her skill, but also her courage in stepping forward and sharing her hidden gift. The audience felt it, the energy palpable, as if they were part of the performance itself. She reached a dramatic sequence, her fingers flying with both confidence and precision. The notes cascaded like a waterfall, intricate yet fluid, commanding attention and admiration. The room seemed to vibrate with sound, and the listeners were fully engaged, transported by the intensity and beauty of the moment. Their initial surprise had turned into awe, and many began to recognize the rarity of what they were witnessing. The woman before them was no longer just a waitress. She was a virtuoso, a master of emotion and technique, and her music spoke volumes without a single word. The melody softened briefly, a delicate passage that contrasted with the dramatic intensity that had preceded it. Here, she allowed vulnerability to shine, letting subtle dynamics and expressive phrasing create a sense of intimacy. The audience felt the honesty in her performance, the personal story embedded in each note. Some closed their eyes, some held their breath, each listener drawn into the world she had created. The music was no longer just sound. It was a bridge, connecting hearts across the room in a shared moment of wonder. Her hands moved effortlessly between rapid passages and slow, lyrical sections, balancing technical brilliance with expressive depth. The hall seemed to hold its collective breath as the music swelled, reaching the final moments of the performance. Every note was intentional, every pause calculated for maximum impact. The tension, the beauty, the emotion, all were perfectly intertwined, leaving the audience utterly captivated. The performance was a revelation, a rare glimpse into the brilliance that could be found in unexpected places. As she approached the final chord, she allowed herself to feel the culmination of the performance, letting her heart guide her hands. The melody soared, then gradually descended, each note carefully placed to resonate fully, leaving an echo that lingered in the hall. The audience, utterly captivated, remained silent for a heartbeat, as if trying to comprehend the depth and intensity of what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, applause erupted, soft at first, then swelling into a thunderous wave of recognition and admiration. Guests rose to their feet, clapping enthusiastically, some moved to tears, others whispering astonished comments to their neighbors. The impact of her performance was undeniable. She had revealed her hidden talent, shared her passion, and left a lasting impression that would be remembered long after the gala had ended. The applause continued, a chorus of appreciation, and she remained seated for a moment longer, savoring the profound connection she had created with the audience. The organizer approached once again, wide-eyed and struggling to find words. They could hardly believe what had just transpired. The woman they had assumed to be just another server had revealed a level of mastery that few could ever achieve. She smiled quietly, humility intact, allowing the applause and admiration to speak for itself. The audience continued to express their amazement, some approaching to ask questions, others simply to convey gratitude for the extraordinary performance. As the final moments of recognition settled, she reflected quietly on the journey she had taken that evening. Years of private practice of nurturing a hidden talent while living an ordinary life had led to this moment. She realized that courage and passion, when expressed honestly, could break through even the strongest assumptions and touch the hearts of people who might have doubted or overlooked her. Her music had become a language that transcended appearances, social barriers, and expectations. She finally rose from the piano bench, acknowledging the audience with a graceful nod. The applause continued, a mix of admiration, surprise, and genuine appreciation. The audience had been transformed from casual observers into witnesses of something rare, a moment of authentic brilliance revealed in the most unlikely form. She had shown that talent and heart could not be hidden forever, and that even those who seem ordinary can create something extraordinary. As the applause began to fade, she allowed herself a quiet exhale, satisfaction and pride mingling with humility. The hall had been filled with music, emotion, and human connection, all brought together by a single, unexpected performance. The piano, silent now, seemed to hum with the memory of what had just occurred, as if acknowledging the power and beauty of her artistry. She had unveiled her true self, leaving an audience inspired, awestruck, and forever changed by her epic masterpiece. The guests continued to speak in low, amazed tones, some replaying the moments in their minds, others sharing quietly among themselves the realization that they had witnessed something unforgettable. The gala had been transformed from a simple celebration into a moment of revelation and wonder. She stepped away from the piano slowly, savoring the lingering connection with the audience, the sense of fulfillment that comes from sharing a hidden gift and seeing it fully appreciated. It was a night that would remain in memory, a moment of triumph and human connection born from courage, talent, and heart.